Among the many industries of the past, I wish to list as one of the most important the old grist mills, where grains, wheat, corn, barley, and oats were taken to be cleaned and ground into flour, meal, and feed for people and animals. The mill at Yanceysville and the dam which provided water and power to turn the wheels and the turbines, which moved the huge stones that did the grinding, had its beginning in 1774. According to the records, Mr. Thomas Johnson, Jr. requested a permit to build the dam across the South Anna River, thereafter to build a grist mill on his property by the dam. During the many years that followed, more acreage was added to this site as the property passed through different owners. One such owner was Charles D. Yancey and his son Robert. They also operated a store, known then as an ordinary, and other types of businesses in the area. Their contribution to the county and to the public led to changing the community's name from South Annaville to Yanceyville. Another owner of the mill, James Duke Knuckles, did much to preserve the industry of milling and helped in the advancement and progress of the community. In 1863, James Edward Smith I purchased the Yanceyville grist mill and the surrounding land from James Knuckles with the purpose of continuing milling operations. As a young man, James Smith had helped his father operate a similar mill in the Greene Springs area of the county, on a much smaller part of the South Anna River. While the original Yanceyville mill building was still in use, James Smith found it needed so much repair work that he decided to take the old building down and construct a new one, 3 stories high above the forebays, right on the site by the dam where the original mill had stood. The planning of removal of the old building and erection of the new one was such that the business of grinding was seldom interrupted. Fortunately, the dam had been kept in good condition, and with the new building a sawmill was added. James Edward Smith I also built a home on the hill above the mill, and it was there that he and his wife raised their family. This home and a small, quaint house built on the opposite hill for an employee to reside, and referred to as the Miller's House, are still standing and have been maintained in excellent condition. As the business increased, a blacksmith shop was built on the property nearby the mill. Traffic to and from the mill consisted of wagons drawn by horses or mules and of ox carts. This mode of transport continued for many, many years. James Smith I, with the help of several of his sons, continued to operate the mill until his death in 1885. One of the sons, Alphonsus Smith, took care of the milling business until the estate was settled. In 1901, Jim Crank and Alphonsus Smith purchased the mill property from the legatees. It was during their ownership that a roller mill system was installed for grinding white flour. Alphonsus Smith continued as miller until ill health forced him to retire. At that point, James Edward Smith II bought out his brother and Jim Crank in 1908 and continued mill operations until he himself fell ill in 1945. After this, James Edward Smith III bought out the shares of his siblings and continued to operate the mill, eventually going from full-time operation to part-time and open for business on Saturdays. While it is still in place, the roller system was retired, yet the original stones were still employed for grinding meal, whole wheat flour, and feed. Of course, over the years, there was always need of employees, and many people assisted in the work at Yanceyville Mill. One such worker was the current owner, who began working in the mill in 1973 and purchased it and the land in 1977. While milling was never his primary occupation, he nevertheless continued the operation and weekend businesses and added a mail order business, eventually shutting down operations in 1995 when his primary occupation expanded. During the course of his ownership, the mill's piers were replaced and upgraded to firm up the foundation. Power for the mill and the sawmill come from a 10-foot dam spanning the South Anna River. The original mill used a water wheel, which had the problem of freezing over in the wintertime. While not as efficient in operation, It was replaced in the new mill with a turbine of French design. Rated at 11 horsepower, it provided the sole power for mill operations until the sawmill was added, at which point the operation was upgraded with a second turbine of 17 horsepower. The great advantage of using turbines versus water wheels is they did not freeze during the winter, so operations could be sustained year-round. All the mill's equipment still exists, stored on site or nearby. At some point in the 20th century, but prior to current ownership, an electric generator was added to the mill's complement of equipment. Its sole purpose was to provide power for lighting, and it, like every other piece of equipment in the mill, was run off the water turbines. Truly a sustainable operation. What is to become of Yanceys Mill? The current owner has had it for sale as of now in 2024 and would like to find the next owner to continue its legacy. Currently, it sits on 3.6 acres spanning the South Anna River, on the west side of Yanceysville Road at the intersection with Vigor Road. Over time, properties such as these are either restored, repurposed, or left to return to Mother Earth. This particular example is in surprisingly good shape, considering its age of 160 years. If you feel like you could be the next owner of this historic property, reach out for more information.